spot find up and every conversation explores the art of thinking beyond the obvious. And today I have a special guest. He's the founder and CEO of Loka, no other than Mr. Joseph Edgar. Welcome, Mr. Joe, an abstract essay. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Sure. Thanks for having me. I think the only thing that stands out there is Loca. We are crazy for local small business. We help local small businesses find and keep customers. And so it's a nice, easy reward app easy cash rewards all local businesses into one nice, easy app. So, yeah, worth a check out.
And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. Joseph. Thank you. And today let's talk about how to get started investing in real estate and grow my retirement or your retirement itself. For someone who has a regular W-2 job and maybe just a 401k, what is the most important mental shift they need to make before writing their first real estate check?
Well, I mean, really, it's the size of the check that I think that matters. So, if you're going to play in, where do you live? I always tell people the first investment they should make is their own roof. And so, if you know, a great advantage that the U.S. has as far as tax, benefits is the primary residency home exemption. So each individual gets $250,000 of capital gains. If they're married, it's a half a million of capital gains. So, if you've saved up a little bit of money, you can put 100,000 down on a piece of property and then build a small, reasonable home, for another 150, and you're probably going to, make another 150. So that would be the first one. But even smaller, if you get a unreasonable small check, let's say you're in the rental space, or maybe you're living in your car. And so no matter where you are, the first thing you should think about is the roof over your head. Invest in that. That's probably the place you live the most, you go there the most, the small nuances of, how you need to invest. If you're living in a cardboard box, well, start there and, just really look at where you're living. How can I improve this? How can you sell that? How can you take, your cardboard box, turn it into a dumpster and sell that dumpster and get yourself in an apartment? So I think a lot of people, because they're renting, they think they can't really get involved in real estate or invest in real estate. And that's a fallacy. You can invest in real estate at any stage. It's just more of the how to. So.
The how to, for sure. And Mr. Joe, we often hear leverage is the superpower of real estate. Can you demystify this for beginner? How do you use other people's money to build your own wealth safety?
Yeah, I mean, leverage is great, no question. You need to know how to use it, though. That's really the problem. Is there's no other way to go down than borrowing money. So if your leverage, if the only type of leverage you're able to utilize is say a credit card, then you're probably not in a position to use any leverage at that time. Don't take out a loan. Credit cards, get very expensive. So really, it's more figuring out your own situation before you're ready to take any borrowing. Until then, you need to bootstrap because the last thing you want is a snowball effect of debt to come after you. And if you're not ready, if you're having to invest in real estate while you're also having to pay your living expenses and fund the small little things, your groceries, everything on debt, then you're not really ready to invest in real estate. And so stay out of it and get your house in order to where you're not leveraging. Now, once you get to a place, and how do you know when you're kind of in that place where you can start leveraging? Well, you know that your entire property and your investment is what will be borrowing the money. If you need to be borrowing it, you're not ready. If your investment is 100% needing the investment, then you say, okay, ready. And what that is if you get a piece of land, you have a down payment, you can borrow something to build on it. Now you're ready to use leverage because you can build on it. You can borrow against it. And then once you find a tenant or you finish it, you can sell it. You now have a way of that project itself being the borrower. And that's really where capital comes into, play is once you're creating a capital investment that it can, pay back its own interests. Now you have the opportunity to use leverage. So, and then from there it grows. What you want is you want your investment to work for you. It should have its own job. So think of all of your wealth as you grow it. They should be your children. So if you don't have any children, then don't borrow any money. But as soon as you do, you say, okay, kids, go to work, and your kids should be producing an income. So those are your investment properties. So if you get two of them, they're working for you and they should be producing an income. When they produce an income, that's when you know that they could now borrow some money and you'll be able to have more children. And so that's the base of it. Is avoid debt. It can be your best friend, but it can also, sink you early.
Interesting tips, Mr. Joseph. And what does a realistic startup financial picture look like? How much capital should someone truly have saved for the first deal, including both the down payment and the often hidden buffer?
Mm. Really depends on who you are and where you are in your life. My first investment property I bought when I was 14. I was a crazy kid, but I also had the benefit of being a kid that didn't have to pay rent. I didn't have to buy my food. These are the things I didn't think about then, but think about it after you become an adult with children and you realize I had this great benefit. I didn't have all these overhead costs on me. I could literally start from zero, and that's a huge place to be able to start from zero because now you can look at borrowing money, and so I could jump right in. But then, if you're an adult and you have kids, and they have costs, then you got to look at life a little different. And you probably don't want to look to the investment property or the passive income property yet. You really want to go back to that first answer I said is look at the house you're in. If you own a home, fantastic. That's the best place to start. Is figuring out a way how you can improve the home you're in and, live in it for 2 years, move it. It makes a lot, but your best investment is the house you're in. And then if you're a little older, you're a retiree, you're looking at more the traditional passive income. You don't want to do a lot of repairs. Find a property that you can invest in. It's newer, it's fresher. So, in your retirement age, you're not having to do a lot of upkeep. You can find a great tenant and you can just reap the benefits of cash rewards. And then, after about 10 to 15 years, a lot of things need replaced, and that's the time to unload it. So if you're a retiree, that's great. You're off. And then if you're a more savvy investor, and by that I mean these real estate investors, if you follow the trends a lot, you're investing, then you already know yourself. But you're buying properties, you're fixing them up, and you definitely should not be holding anything longer than 2 years. Moving and diversifying your projects and growing them more is really important. So that's just a part of the beast. So yeah, depending on who and where you are in your life is what you invested.
Mr. Joseph, beyond the financials, what are the key personal factors like risk tolerance and time commitment that someone must
Mm.
honestly assess before choosing a real estate strategy?
Oh man, that's so hard. When I was like I said, I was 14 when I started. And I had the benefit my father was a contractor, so he swung a hammer and he had 13 kids and we all were the labor force. We had to pick up boards, sweep floors, put up walls, do the roofing, the sheetrock. We did insulation. We did it all. And my mother was a janitor, so we kept pretty busy when we were young. But as you learn those traits, I was very fortunate. So when I stepped into fixing up houses, I was able to have a lot of those skills already there. So that was great. Hard work ethic and put together. But my father, who was a much harder worker than I was, and he'd always go out there. He'd be wearing these Bermuda shorts in the middle of winter. I mean, guy just tough builder. And he got into real estate investing as well. It's where I got it from. I learned some of the basics from him. And as he got into it, he found that his heart was so big. His heart was much bigger than his pockets. And what I mean by that is he'd sell a house and he'd carry the note. And it happened time and time again where our family would go hungry because someone he sold a house to was like, well, we just can't make the payment. And he'd be like, oh, it's okay. And would not really stick to the business model, which is these are investments. If you want to be a philanthropist, that's great. Go and set up a nonprofit and be a philanthropist. If you want to get into real estate, you're not you're not a philanthropist. It's a business and it requires the dedication. So I knew this when I was young, and I told myself, if I'm going to get into this business, then I have to be serious about it. And when I was 17, almost 18, and it was Christmas time, I recall, and I had sold a house to a family, a young family. They had 3 little girls, adorable little family, and, by this time, I had been buying houses, and I'd sell them for a loss, take a capital loss, and I would let, others do a lot of the work, so I wasn't doing as much, work by that time on each unit. But I had sold this house, and they had fallen behind on their payments. And I was out of town doing some houses on a different place, so I was gonna be back for Christmas, and I literally, I mean, this sounds awful, but I did this and I made myself do this. I sat in the driveway on Christmas Eve to serve an eviction notice. At the time, it's not technically an eviction notice, it is that I'm gonna start foreclosure process. But you would not believe, I mean, I was literally in tears thinking like, "This is awful, I hate this feeling," but I told myself, if I'm gonna be in this, I gotta do it right. Otherwise, I'm a philanthropist. And I went and served that notice. Thank goodness they were not home. But I did return just after the New Year's and actually did have to serve it. But I made myself be there on Christmas Eve to tell myself, like, listen, I have warned him many times. I've talked to him. I mean, this has to happen. And so it's an emotional thing that you have to really adjust in your own mind and heart. You have to have the stomach for it. You have to have the mind for it. And so if you're not willing to commit to that, then take a different part of the real estate business. Don't get into the rentals. Don't get into carrying notes. It's hard. Never rent to someone you cannot evict. And that's so hard because you come across so many elderly, sweet elderly ladies that you're like, I would love to, help you find a home. But if you cannot evict them, do not rent to them. And that's just it's a hard mental emotional thing. But I say out of all the skills you have to prepare for, it's that one because you can be an amazing carpenter, you can be an amazing negotiator, you can buy some really great deals and really provide some value. But if you can't operate your business with the savvy mind that you need, then you're sinking your ship anyway. So yeah, tough, but definitely you have to have an emotional IQ, or I'd say an EQ that is tolerant for the business you're in.
Let's talk about the on the ramps. What are the pros and cons of the most common starting points? A single family rental versus a house hack versus a passive syndication.
Do you mean like which type of investment one should look at, whether they're buying the home or just helping syndicate it?
Yes, please.
So, I mean, these syndications, I've never done any of them. I see them pass to me all the time, and it's a good way I think to kind of get in the business because if you can't invest in the property yourself, well, there's lots of people who have money who can invest in those properties. So it's an easy way to get into. So a lot of these people, they run around, they find deals that are really good. So it helps you get a trained eye. When I first got into real estate, most of the deals I would do were not for sale, and that's still happening now. It's a slight different market just because there's so much demand for real estate than there was in the early to mid '90s. But it's still there. So people go around. It gives you a trained eye to try to find a deal, and then you take that deal and you go and you find investors who want that, and you get basically a commission. So some of them do them as active realtors, and then some aren't. realtors. They're just these indicators that help put together deals. And in addition, there's a nuanced market in there where many people will sell the home for themselves. So when I got started, that's all I did. I did owner carry notes. I would go in, I would convince the seller. I'd find some old beat up property that basically is just abandoned. I'd track down the owner and I'd say, listen, will you sell this to me on a note? I will pay you every month this amount of cash. And they're like, what? And so I would do that. And then I would sell it with almost the same terms, but a little more favorable to me on a note. So then someone coming in to buy it, it like came with financing. So it was a really nice, easy way to sell. I would then tell them, all right, well, the whole point is that you're going to fix this up. And if, something fell apart, then I had to have a property I'd have to reclaim that was partially fixed up. And if everything went great, then, they got a great property, I got a great property and all. So that's another way of syndicating is people are going around buying those notes or finding places or individuals who are trying to sell their note. So they'll sell their note anywhere from 50 cents on the dollar to, 80 or 90% on the dollar, depending on what the note is. And so that's a great way to get into real estate if you have absolutely no capital, because you can learn a lot about the industry. You can learn, all right, these properties are great. You're going to hear from your investors. They're going to tell you. Then, of course, there's investing in the property itself, which is, once you have some capital, you can do that. But there's this place in the middle that many don't talk about, and these are the hard money lenders. The hard money lenders are the same investors that are buying notes, like to invest in real estate, and they like to invest in real estate investors. So if you think that you have a deal that is pretty nice and you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, this is most guaranteed not going to be your first one. So if you're out there and you have nothing, do a couple of syndicated deals where you're trying to put them together first. But once you find one, then you say, okay, I'm going to bring in this investor. And if we just put about $10,000 and we do this lawn and we change the garage slightly, then we can make we can make this money. And so the hard money lender is going to charge you an interest rate. He's not going to do it on percentage. He's going to do an interest rate. And they're basically, I'm not going to say loan sharks, but it's very similar world. So it's expensive. So right now, Federal Reserve just announced they're going to lower interest rates by another 0.25%. So you're looking at 4.5%, and you're probably going to pay on market for hard money loan about 10%. So it's expensive. It's about double the going rate. And so you have to have a plan to do something really fast because the lender, it costs them money. And then the other thing to be aware of is they're going to charge you some points at closing. So you may end up having to pay like 2 or 3 points, which means 300 basis points of the total loan amount. And so that's 3% of the loan you're going to have to pay at the beginning because, they're having to move money a lot and you only want to borrow the money for a short time. So you'll either have more points at the beginning or you'll have a requirement they have to keep the loan going for 2 years. So if you don't want a prepayment penalty, then you'll take the points. So it's expensive, but it's another way where you can jump in the market if you found a deal. And then there's this next one where it's bigger deals and you have more investors. And that is, let's say you do your first multifamily property. The property, in fact, I've got one right now that's for sale. And I think someone's trying to syndicate on the purchase. The property is for sale for about $4 million. It's about 30 units just here in North Austin. And I know the buyer has come in. They have very little capital, but they've gone and put together 4 different investors and said, hey, how about I'll lead point, I'll run all this, and we all buy this together. And there is no loan. They buy it together, and they now trust the syndicator. And he's going to go in and fix up the property, get it back to market, and they all make some money on the background. So that's once you have kind of an established group. So those are all phases into it. And then the fourth phase, as we talked about, is the one where it's now your capital. You can syndicate with your capital too, and that's just bringing in partners or doing something like that. But once it's your capital, I have a good friend who we've built a lot of stuff with in Oregon. Like right now, I have 2 different companies in Oregon. One of them is just building new construction homes, and then one of them is doing rentals up there. And the one that's doing new construction homes, the contractor is working on it. I've talked to him so many times where, he's doing so many of these projects. I'm like, he syndicates them. He goes and finds the projects. I do all the financing, and he really has to take care of the end. And so there's an interest rate we have to pay to me, plus there's a closing cost, there's capital gains. So by the end of it, some of them, as the market swings, I'm like, you're not making as much as you should be on a lot of these deals because we split the profit at the end. And I told him, I was like, I think it would be better for you to go buy a piece of property, you know, buy it outright. You've got the cash, where you're paying, between 60 to $100,000 for a piece of property. I mean, I can't believe I say that now, but this is the world we're in. And once you have that, build a small, reasonable home. We're talking like 100 to $150,000. Very small, one car garage, 3 bedroom, maybe even a 1 bath. I mean, very small economic home, and live in it for 2 years. And you're going to by far see that life is easier. There's less complexity, and you're going to make more over a 2 year period because you're going to sell it after 2 years. And I would recommend people do that before you really get into bigger investing. I have so many people call me and ask me, like, hey, I've got this multifamily deal. I'm syndicating, putting together. And then I find out, I was like, well, tell me about your home. And I find out they rent. They're living in a rental, but they're syndicating a multifamily apartment building. And that blows my mind. Put your house in order, do one little part at a time. Don't jump into lakes you can't swim in. Really start with the small stuff. Get yourself to where you have 250 to $500,000 in capital, and you can go after your own projects because hard money loan and syndications, they are there for a reason. They're there to make money, so it's expensive. So yes, you can do them, but keep them on the lighter side because soon you're not gonna, or not even soon. I mean, you're not going to be making that much out of them because the real estate investors are taking a risk and they're going to expect a return from them. So I really recommend people to focus more on, building up their own capital versus, helping other investors grow theirs. It's probably the first focus they should do.
Mr. Joseph, what does the finish line look like? Describe the picture of a successful retirement funded by real estate. Is it all paid off properties or a massive portfolio with the property manager?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you want from the end goal. So if your end goal is a retiree, but what your fund should ultimately look at is if you're going to create a property management company that manages your properties, then you need to be buying and owning in a specific area because geography matters. So if you're going to have properties that are all over the city and in multiple cities and states, then you're looking at having a different property manager. Property management is less important because it doesn't cost that much and they don't make that much. So the only time you really benefit is if all your properties are a condensed area. And by that, I mean, if you have lots of multifamily and then they're in the same part of town, it makes sense to manage your own properties. If it's not that, then work with a property manager because it matters less. The asset growth itself does matter. And that is, you want passive income. So as it gets bigger, this is the strange part, is in the beginning, I'll tell you, do not borrow money. Don't use any debt. In the end, use debt. Debt's fantastic in your end result because real estate is really made to be leveraged. And you can increase your portfolio by quite a bit by leveraging. And that means, if you have, if in the end you got, 2 apartment buildings, and I don't know. Let's say they're, I mean, it's hard for me to give an example because they're much larger now. So each apartment building is like worth 20 million. But if you've got some smaller ones, let's say you got, 4 duplexes. Let's start smaller. You got 4 duplexes. You can have them all paid off, and that's great. But you can actually leverage that entire portfolio and end up with 8 to 10 rentals in the same kind of neighborhood and area, which makes nice efficiency. You can get a discount on the property management because they are local. So with that small number of properties, you still want a property manager, but now you've leveraged it, and so you're able to have that many portfolios. So if one goes vacant, well, the profits on the other one are really assuaging the other ones while you find a new renter. And so it's going to produce you a nice, steady income more than you would out of just the four. The 10 are going to produce you a nice, steady passive income that, is something that if you're, say, in your 50s, then you're still going to want to grow. That's not retirement, that's still growing. And now the income that you get from there, you can now put into buying more properties and you leverage each one. Real estate, to be honest, on average, leverages at about 80%. So it's really high. I'm not saying necessarily that you should do that, but real estate does stay quite leveraged. And it's a nice one to leverage because you have a tenant in it. But yeah, that's really the key you're trying to do is get a portfolio that provides you a passive income that at the minimum supports your lifestyle. And that lifestyle is defined by however you are. And that should be a retirement definition. So if you're saying, I want to retire to where, I bring in 150 a year take home, well, then that tells you how many rentals you really need to set up and tells you, how leveraged you need to be. But if you're in your 50s, it should be something that you plan on continuing to grow. If you are 65 and older, then you can make a decision and say, okay, I actually just want to phase off into sunset. So I'm going to put together this whole portfolio and that's it. It's going to provide me a passive income and I can pass this on to my kids. And, you have a nice little egg that will provide for you into the future, however long you live. And you don't have to worry about, it running out. And so it's nice. And you can diversify off that income. So yeah, that's what I would say. The ultimate goal is to really figure out where you want to be, when you really want to set off into the sunset and reverse engineer that to where you need to be now.
Interesting indeed, Mr. Joseph. And before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too. Comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast law 101 and mental health 101 and my love letters in fourth season, as well as my movie 101 review, music 101, and science 101 and sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Joseph, if you could give one audience one single actionable piece of homework to get started on their real estate journey, what would it be?
I've written a lot of articles out there on how to get started. So I have one. You can find me if you just look up Joe Edgar or Joseph Edgar or Loca. You'll find all my articles. I write for Forbes Monthly, but there's an Entrepreneur, Newsweek, Wall Street Journal, Marketplace. There's quite a few other ones, and you're going to find one of them how to become your first millionaire, and it gives you kind of a step by step of really getting into real estate and getting it. And then I have quite a few others that kind of build on them. So if you track down those articles, they'll really give you a lot of insight and how to get started and which phase you are in real estate and to really grow a portfolio and create kind of a passive income and a nice little fortune and wealth for yourself and family.
Indeed, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. Joseph Edgar. And can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your business, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Yes, please go check out loca.us. It's LOCA, loca.us. Crazy for Loca. Check it out. It's if you're a small local business, we have lots of tools coming to local businesses that are really going to benefit consumers who are looking for cash rewards in one app and great ways to find local businesses and to support local businesses who are looking for customers. And so check it out, loca.us.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Joseph Edgar because if you support him, for sure, more and more empowering business like this to come. So, Mr. Joseph, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Talk to you.
Modicon people, see you soon.